back. But your team, the Concerned Women for America of Texas, walked the halls, as I like to say, were a part of the ground game on this legislation. Talk to us about your experience during the session and what you drew from it and what you were hearing from your supporters about why it mattered so much for you to get involved in this issue.
I don't suppose that any issue has been fought as hard as this particular issue was. I've been there. We've walked on Bible studies. In the public schools, we've walked on many of the life issues with the wonderful sonogram bill that was passed and the Women's Right to Know bill, all of those things. But this bill was different. And I truly believe that the reason it was different is because the forces of hell knew what would happen if it got passed. And so, together with that, I think that the people of Concerned Women for America felt, and I was more diverse just a minute. Jonathan was wonderful, and it is such a privilege for Concerned Women for America to work alongside Texas Values. We have a lot in common, and we're a good team, I think. And I thank you, Jonathan, for supporting me. But I really believe that our people are becoming alive. About time, people, you know, because we're on the verge of losing everything that is dear to our family values. Many, many years ago, Mrs. LaHaye had protecting family values as a part of our Concerned Women for America. I just want to briefly, if I may, Jonathan, tell you a little bit of something. In 2007, Concerned Women for America published this little brochure, Unmasking the Gay Agenda. Some of them will be out at the table in a few minutes. I want to brief you about this because I've heard this question so many times. How did we get here? This is not this is not the way I was raised. How did we get to this point? Well, I want to show you just a little bit of something. In 1972, there was a gay rights agenda and it had 2 points to it. Repeal all laws governing the age of sexual consent. This should send a chill down the spine of any parent. It would allow pedophiles and homosexuals who were so inclined to access your children and teens for their own predatory sexual gratification. Does any of this ring true? Secondly, repeal all legislative provisions that restrict the sex or number of persons entering into a marriage unit. Well, voila, as of the Supreme Court decision. Now, in 1987, there was a homosexual march on Washington. They had 4 things that they wanted. They said the government should provide protection from discrimination based on sexual orientation in employment, public accommodation, remember Houston, education, just as protection is provided on race, creed, color, sex, or national origin. We've seen this happening. The second thing, anti-homophobic curriculum in the schools. Translation, pro-homosexual government-mandated indoctrination. This is already occurring. We know from the books that we have reviewed, this is already occurring, particularly in the health education textbooks. Number 3, the government should ensure all public education programs include programs designed to combat lesbian gay prejudice. Institutions, get this, institutions that discriminate against lesbian and gay people should be denied tax-exempt status. We got that? And federal funding. Number 4, public and private institutions should support parenting by lesbian or gay couples. And we know in Massachusetts they've already had to give up that. So we see that they had an agenda and they have been very, very accurate in moving forward on their agenda. So, Anne, what do you think might be their next goal? I'm an old school teacher. And let me just tell you, I'm there to protect children. That's my thing. I believe that the next go-around that we have on this is going to be our children. Now, Concerned Women for America also does that too. So, we've got this little tool for you. These are bookmarks, and they're available back at our table back there. And they are there to know your rights. The children should be told this. Know your rights. Freedom freedom of speech and religion in public schools. The Supreme Court said this: it can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. That is within a Supreme Court decision. They have rights, they need to know them, and these are available for them. So, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ann. That's valuable information for people to know. Jeremy, during the legislative process and the discussion on this legislation and other religious freedom efforts, numerous lawyers testified, two from Liberty Institute. Craig Estes, Senator Estes, remember the Yale lawyer that was discussed during a hearing that was from Liberty Institute. That was how he was referred to. I think that was Cleve Doty. The importance of having lawyers during the legislative process. As a lawyer myself, I understand the importance of it. But talk to me a little bit about your experience with that and why you believe it mattered, particularly in this issue, as people are trying to navigate this new legal landscape.
Well, two specific words come to mind: billable hours. But you know, look, attorneys are very important, obviously, and I kind of feel arrogant saying that as an attorney myself, but we do go to 3 years of law school for some reason, and part of that is to look through what the laws are and to make sure that things are well and in good order, because if subtle changes in words or even placements of commas can really change the difference in what a law is going to mean and be applied with. And if we can insert specific language that we know has been already held up in court over and over and over again, get that done on the front end, well then it's much more likely that these laws are going to be more and more effective as they go and are applied to do the purpose that they want to have. Now, that's important for attorneys to be involved in things, but I don't think it's half as important as it is for citizens themselves coming down to the legislature and inviting themselves into that process. It is your government after all. And as we've just now seen immediately ahead of us here, to have pastors stand up and be willing to walk the halls and to testify. Look, I did legislative work for about 7 years, a lot of the same stuff that Jonathan does now in the state of West Virginia, a much different scale of stuff, but same basic issues. And I'm not exaggerating when I say when a pastor walks into an office of a lawmaker, things change drastically. Part of that is simply a constituent walks into the room, but a larger portion of that is the mantle that these men carry into that office. And that has not escaped. I have seen laws go down to the feet because the first row in the gallery was occupied by pastors who didn't want that law to go into place. I've seen laws passed because that same gallery is filled with pastors who wanted to see it passed. So I applaud you men who've come down from every part of the state to be a part of this process, and I hope you'll continue to do so. If you're looking for someone who doesn't speak very well, I suggest this gentleman down here who apparently didn't know what to say but spoke for 15 minutes about
Well, and I did promise we were going to take some questions. Our time is a little constrained, so I think we've got time for one question that we're going to take. And Nicole Hudgens from my staff is going to come up and give you the question because we're absent from our microphone. So the question's been asked about ban of churches and organizations having tax-exempt status and removed. That's a concern that's been talked about. So churches and religious leaders, I guess, they want to know, are they protected right now when it comes to their views on marriage and religious freedom? Is the First Amendment enough?
Well, it should be. It certainly should be. Now, thankfully, we've seen laws go into place here in Texas, but also throughout the United States, called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And there's also a corollary to that act called the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. Whoever names these acts needs to shorten up the phrases drastically. But we call them RFRA and ARLUPA. If you want to look really important at a cocktail party, that's how you refer to these things. But these are laws that basically say, look, before the government is able to substantially burden your religious freedom, they've got to provide a compelling justification for doing so and prove that they've done it through the least restrictive means possible. So yes, thankfully the First Amendment is enough to protect our churches and our pastors in particular more often than not, but we're trying to add as many bullets to that gun as we can to make sure that stays effective, but also that we begin to restore more and more religious liberty throughout this country.
And I would say too that my experience, and others would probably agree, that if you've got specific language in law, as we did with the Pastor Protection Act, it should leave no doubt when you're going to have a judge that's ultimately going to be deciding a lot of these issues.
I'll add one more little plug for either my language or the pastor's language here. It doesn't necessarily matter. Well, actually, I like my language better, but I haven't seen it, so I guess I can't say that too much. The point being, religify yourself, if I can coin that phrase. Tell the court who you are before you have to go into that court. There has been very good language or very good protections provided to us in cases like Hobby Lobby, for instance. There's a great case called Hosanna Tabor that involves church employment matters. Those were all able to be successful largely because those churches had stuff in place before the lawsuit was served upon them. I'm telling you now so that when you call me to say, hey, such and such has happened, can you defend me? I'll say, well, what does your language look like? And then we'll make a determination as to whether or not, not like I want to defend you, it's a matter of whether we can defend you. If you, God forbid, the time comes we have to be going into court, we need to be well prepared for it all.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Ann, thank you for joining us. I know there are a number of other questions. Jeremy will be here afterwards in the reception, so will I. An opportunity and resources that I think will handle a lot of these issues. Thank you, expert panel.